The only thing is that you have to, be very objective and be non-partisan in order to be able to perceive who's really at the top of the pyramid. I mean, it just goes without saying almost. But getting back to the main point, you see, is that yes, when you're trying to identify these super narcissists, these pathological people, we can only diagnose them correctly and sanely if we understand the anatomy of the psyche, we understand these dynamics, so that we can start making sense of why science and why other, academics do what they do, even how the royal families do what they do, all of these kinds of things. To start, we've never really anatomized these people. That's why I'm optimistic about the world we're living in, is because we now have the intelligence, the education, and the psychological ability to do something that our forefathers were never able to do. We've not only been able to isolate that pernicious evil force that's out there, but we can diagnose it, so that it's no longer just finger pointing and exonerating our own self, our own tyrannical aspects. We mustn't be able to do that. We must be able to understand what it is that motivates these people to do what they do, because after all, there must be something terribly contaminated. It's a phenomenon. It's something that can be studied. Evil can always be studied, just like anything. Like any type of behavior can be studied. So we now have to study evil.
And to be able to step out of the stream, be able to,
yes.
and as you said, get off the ship, or just at least get out of the way.
We have to, because it's from all these established leviathans that are absolutely tyrannical, in the sense that they, like I said, the academics thinking that they own knowledge, and knowledge is something they possess, and something they can lock up over there in the Bodleian library or whatever, or these corporations or the governments who think they own and control power and treat people like slaves. You see, we're talking about tyranny here, and there's an anatomy of tyranny. And the anatomy of tyranny, just like the Socrates and the Platos of the world always understood, and like the Machiavellis of the world understand, is that it's rooted in psychology. And you see, these people are very psychologically aware. Let's just put it this way, that they're more psychologically aware than we, their slaves, are. So that's where we need to turn the tables. I mean, the blurb of my previous book, The Irish Origins, talks about that, about shining light back onto the faces of those who claim to love the light. Okay, let's do that. Let's start educating ourselves psychologically so that we can start to understand the nature of the spider, the nature of the multi-legged, multi-headed thing that may have no spirit at all, that may be just a form of parasite, slightly different than the parasites we've known, but a vampiristic type of energy that we are helping to feed, that we are actually feeding every day with our energies, with our emotions, particularly our emotions, by our fears, see, all of these kinds of things. So I don't foresee any difficulty in getting rid of the parasite. When you are so systemically strong that your enemy cannot defeat you, you've won. But fighting your enemy with any kind of weaponry or tool or agenda that is also being used by the enemy, or that it might have even been handed to you by your enemy, will never succeed. So that's what we've been doing. We've been fighting with the tools provided by our enemy. This is why there's never been a modicum of real, actual, you see, combat or change. And in fact, what's actually happened is most of the world is now exhausted or dead. And so the big brother is actually, in a way, as secretive and as small as they are, as ultimately powerless as they are, they're actually quite content. I mean, I think they've been clinking their glasses many times over some of their great successes, and I do believe that they feel that man is about as dumbed down as he can get. When they look at the world right now, I mean, when you look at the world right now, if you were one of them, wouldn't you be satisfied?
Well, I think they really show themselves in this way, in that now they don't even bother to hide their actions.
Right.
You know,
right.
And in a sense, I think it plays right into their game. Is that they want you to know, look, yeah, we did that. You know, we got you by the, you know,
that's right.
under our thumbs, and that's we want you to know it. You know. And
I don't think all of them are like that, but certainly a lot who are maybe on the lower rung, or the media types, the people, they absolutely don't mind at all. You know, there's even politicians who've been sort of, you know, made Freudian slips and stuff like that. So it's definitely provable that, you know, they actually relish this. And that's why I'm a bit, you know, skeptical of people who are talking about, oh my God, they're going to wipe out the populations, they're going to open all these prisons, you know, they've got all of these gated, you know, prisons for us, and they're going to do this to us and that. As far as I'm concerned, I would go, why would you want to do that? The smiling depressive, the unjailed prisoner, is already such a despicable creature walking around on this earth. How, if you were in the control of this world, would you have any worry whatsoever? People are about as drugged up and as dumbed down as you can possibly get, and things are getting even worse. So, I mean, It's ridiculous. Man and the next generation to come is even going to be worse. So I couldn't even foresee how they could be in any kind of panic or any kind of, any type of trepidation. They may have certain concerns, of course. Like I said, there is a rising tide of knowledge, and they're always going to be keeping an eye on that, etc. But I don't think they're always going to look at the bigger picture, and they're going to look at the people of the world. Look at the East. Look at India and how narcissistic the Indians have become. This was always meant to be the holy cradle of whatever. Of course, if you're from there, you have people like in your family from there, and you've really made a study, there's nothing holy about India whatsoever, quite the reverse. But on paper, the place looks like the greatest, most spiritual, holy shrine, all these gurus and whatnot. Look at the place now. A little bit of capital has come in, a little bit of outsourcing has come in, and they are more materialistic. It's the same thing goes for the Japanese and the Chinese. The unbelievable racism and narcissism and materialism is coming to the East. Like an obsession that the Western man could never even imagine in his wildest dreams, all right? So many illusions are being shattered. So when you are part of the control mechanism and you're looking down from your penthouse at all of this and how successful McDonald's is in every, third world place in the world, and how everybody's smoking McDonald's and wearing their 49ers hats or whatever they're into, and they're into all the worst kind of music you can imagine, and you look at all of that stuff, how could you not be totally content? People are as regimented and as dumbed down as possible. This always needs to be taken into consideration by those who are looking into this matter. But again, getting back to the main point, the solutions, is if we now realize that these people have had their fingers on the pulse of the psyche of mankind, so that their particular traumas and their wars and their draconian measures, or even the times when they lighten up a bit and you can have a hippie era and all these other kinds of things, they keep their fingers on the pulse of what we would call the greater body of society. This is what is hard to see, because it's the habitat. They're controlling the habitat. And the animal, remember, within the habitat, like the ant within the territory, or the seal or the dolphin, does not feel that action. That's why as we go down through the years, I'm hoping that people will start to see this more subtle manipulation of the human habitat. Some people are waking up to this, and it's great. But when they're manipulating the habitat, and they're doing it through, and also manipulating the individual mind through psychology, the only remedy is to turn the tables on them. Use the same kind of concept that they've been using of the human race. Those aren't tools created by them. That knowledge is man's knowledge. Psychology is your raison d'etre for being in this world. So pick up those tools and start using it to understand the nature of the self, the human dynamic. Learn how this war on consciousness takes place. Learn how the psyche, as well as the biology, is manipulatable, and how we buy into what these people are providing for us. Nobody is standing at your door in fatigues with a gun to your head telling you to do anything. Not in your house, not in your job, and it never will be. They create the control purely through psychological, psychic means. Yes, there is a physical, social, political concomitant to that, or an aspect of that, or a permutation to that kind of control. But again, mostly, it's you buying into it. You're the one going to take their vaccinations. You're the one going to the doctor to suck in the medicine, the garbage that he's giving you, the poison. You're the one, who's going to these leviathans. You're the one who goes into the legal system without understanding about the law. You're the one who goes to their courts. You're the one who pays the taxes, you see. You're the one who sends your kids to these monstrous schools.
I was thinking
as if they're going to learn anything.
I mean, you just said that no one's putting a gun to your head, but they were doing that exactly in Maryland recently, forcing parents to take their kids to get vaccinated.
Yes, but there are 100. But remember, those people were not making. See, this is again where even a basic understanding of the law of the state matters. This is what I'm saying. People are legally. I mean, remember I've said that over the political system, I always favor the legal system. At least you should know your legal rights.
Yeah.
All those families had to do was create a class action, not only against those officers individually. I mean, take them to civil court for breach of their work individually. I mean, not the police force, but those men can all be taken to civil court for false arrest or belligerent activities and be fined, and they will be fined in civil court. It can be provable. The second thing to have done, of course, is that no criminal action ever took place by those families not taking their children to be vaccinated or not taking them to school or whatever. No crime, no corpus delicti, right? No crime was being perpetrated. And secondly, and further up the ladder, when you really get into this kind of sovereignty law, this kind of corporate law, whatever, you'll find that a state is a hypothetical creature. Not the mayor, not the police chief, not any of these governors have any legal right whatsoever that's endorsed by the people. Nobody ever came to you and said there's a thing called a state. A stateism is no law whatsoever creates a state.
But if,
so
if
people,
they're not following, if the state itself is not following the law to begin with,
right?
What kind of
Exactly. Yeah, you can take by Freedom of Information Acts and all sorts of other things that people are not that difficult for intelligent people to work out how to do. Through RICO forms and other things, you can take the mayor, the judge, the police chief, the captain of the chief, the guy who set that order up for those cops to go down into the street and do that. You can take the individual cops. Each one of them can end up in court. See how they like it when, again, as you say, you shine the light back on them. We are in a state of perpetual ignorance and a perpetual fear that traumatizes action. But Eustace Mullins, you see, and Jordan Maxwell, and so many other people who are experts in this law, and I don't mean you have to take it as far as they need to do, just learn some basic in-your-face stuff that happens when investigative journalists and class action lawsuits are taking place. Just know the basics of your rights, and then these things, like vaccinations and so on and so forth, that a reverend is protected against taking vaccinations because he can come under religious exoneration. Knights Templars, Masons, right? Priests. Find out about the difference between canon law and civil law and maritime law. Study these fascinating things, you see, so people can start discovering their rights and realize that a lot of people will never be able to study this, so they have a tremendous resistance. So then, my voice goes out to the intelligent people of the world who don't find a problem learning these things. Then create blogs and websites and newsletters and even little YouTube programs to educate your fellows, your brothers and sisters, in the legal strengths that you have, because that's very, very important, that it's an alternative to the political leviathan, because politicians promise and never deliver. And if you take political action thinking that you're going to move society forward or you're going to better your state or we play into the hands of the very deceivers who really don't have to do anything, Adam. They don't even have to pull the strings anymore. We, the white mice running on their wheel, create more havoc from our own ignorance than they could ever manufacture by overt control. So this needs to be addressed. Yes, there is overt control historically from the people at the top of the pyramid and further down, but there is also the mess that the well-meaning...
The prisoners are the guards now.
Yes, exactly. And this is the thing that also needs to be addressed. And the answer is, again, the same, whether it's the top of the pyramid or the bottom of the pyramid. Knowledge, know thyself, psychology, sociology, learn what's been going on, like an anatomy. Do it objectively. Don't get into paranoia. I don't want to hear fear. I don't want to hear woe is me. Anything can be happening tomorrow. It could be doom, it could be gloom, it could be great. We don't know. It's not our business to think about what's going to happen tomorrow. We only have the business to look at the problem right now, just in exactly the same way as the nurses and the doctors in casualty ward look at the wound that is happening now. They deal with the fact right now, just like a man whose crops are dying, he has to deal with the problem right now. Yeah. We need to get into that mode, you see, and have an urgency and have a passion. But don't have a paranoia and don't have any of these fatiguing, self-defeating, self-negating emotions, you see. And don't hang around with people who have that kind of pessimism. It's not good for you.
It just freezes you. Yeah. It just closes you down.
And also, simply like we started talking about it at the beginning of the show, don't worry if anybody else is doing it. Don't be waiting, looking at your watch, waiting for the we, the us, and the our. Get on with it yourself. Delight in being the first to do something. It doesn't matter if your mom and your dad and your silly girlfriend is into it. Go on and do it yourself. And if they want to follow, fine. They may not even know that you're doing it. Do it in your garret, Make it a personal study. Get real. And don't bother talking to those people who are not into this, who can't grasp this. The day will come when they will get it, or out of natural curiosity they might approach you. But see, and I'm saying this, and why I'm so insistent on this, is because I keep getting emails from people all the time who've exhausted themselves trying to convert, the people that they live with and the people that, they go out with and the mates down at the pub. And they come back absolutely exhausted and tyrannized and utterly exasperated. Why? Who asked you to do that?
Right.
In fact, here's a perfect example. Last month we went and did the Liverpool conference. When we studied the demographics of, and by the way, this was a sold-out gig, by the way.
Yeah.
Tickets were oversold, okay?
I was checking that out.
But,
that was great.
Yeah, and it was great. Now, however, when we looked at the demographics, we found that almost nobody from the town of Liverpool, this was hosted right in the center of Liverpool, right near Sefton Park, almost nobody from Liverpool turned up.
Oh. Yeah, everybody came from far away.
All over England, Scotland, Wales, Suffolk, Bath, as I said, Scotland, Scandinavia, lots of people from there, people from France and people from Ireland even, right? All around, in other words. Nobody from Liverpool. That's what I mean. If you think that this message is only for local yokels, forget it. All evidence proves the contrary, even evidence on the internet, etc. It's not going to be something that you're going to see happening in your local area because this is a very big message. That's why. You can't have somebody swallow the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's not going to happen in your local area amongst 2 or 3 of you. You'll be lucky to have even a single person interested. But this is a global message, and the reason why is because it's a very big subject. You have a tremendous interest in it, but it's going to be spread over a large period of, a large space. So never feel pessimistic because there are millions who are into this, millions in the third world and millions elsewhere. But the downside is you may not absolutely see that in your home territory, and that's just simple sociological demographics. It's just simple to understand why that is. But it should not make people pessimistic at all, because I'm seeing that pessimism, that when they find that there's not all ears and there's a giant audience in their area, or they can't get something going, but they look around and find everybody turns out for a goddamn football match or some other nonsense, well, that's just to be accepted. Don't fret about it. Don't get pessimistic about it. It's just the way it is. The audience is a global one. And I very early on, learned that and then took my message up to the global level through the web and through, public talks around the world, same like David Icke did. I didn't sit home trying to convince the dumbasses in my street, to make it blunt. You know what I mean? No way. Yeah, you'd think it was a desert. Yes, and this is, as I say, the downside. The upside of it is that this is the spirit of the rebellion, the spirit of change I've been talking about, where you have the internet. You had to have that technology come about because, remember, the conspiracy movement as we know it probably couldn't even exist at all
without it.
Without the tools that came. You see, so here, when people broaden their perspective and look at the canvas from afar, they'll get what we were talking about earlier, that the right tools, the right place, the right intention, many things have to come together to create great change. We're almost there. We're almost there. It's a very small percentage now of what is required to really, starve this parasite. The tools are being handed to us by forces that are even outside of our own, understanding in a way.